Hello and welcome to the final video in this series of EG168 Matlab videos. This video will go over troubleshooting. I have covered troubleshooting in a few of the other videos, but this one will just go over a few other examples. This video will be looking at how to approach some of the common errors made on Matlab and how to fix them. So some good things to consider when things go wrong in Matlab are: 1. Are you in the correct folder? Since this seems almost patronizing, but it is a mistake made by many people, so it's always good to check you're in the right location. You can do that by checking your current folder location, which will tell you where you are. The next thing to consider is cases. Now, cases is something that trips many people up, including myself, on a regular basis, since Matlab is case sensitive. So if you use a capital letter, say capital letter in vector 10 right here, then you would have to ensure that you use a capital letter consistently. But if you use a capital letter on something that shouldn't be capitalized, then you will have issues. So we'll cover that a bit more in a bit. Third thing to look at are how to treat rows and vectors, since they behave differently. So if you are struggling to remember which format you need for multiplying, dividing, adding or subtracting matrices and vectors, you need to check the matrices and vectors video which was made earlier, since it covers all of this in quite a nice comprehensive manner. Now, the fourth one to consider is using incorrect indices within a matrix, and that's just due to typos, carelessness, confusion. It happens very easily, and the best thing to do is just read the error that's produced, check the line it's on, check the location, have a nice slow read through it and make sure it's correct. Another thing you'll find is when there is an error, even before you run it, in an M file, it will show a little red area where you have something wrong. But we'll go through that in a slightly more thorough manner. But if you want to do it quickly, you can just run up and down the side and fix things wherever you need to. But let's start with a few simple examples. So if we type in the following, so want 8 plus 5 over 4, and multiply that by 2 to the power of 3 plus 20, and times that by 1/3, we will get an error, and that's because I have put multiplication sign in where it's not needed. And Matlab tells us what the error is, and it also will point to the location where we're having the issue. So in this case, it shows us that we need to get rid of this extra multiplication sign. So if we copy and paste that and do that again, this time without the unneeded multiplication sign, it will work quite nicely. Now let's try another one. So let's produce a simple example where we define a vector and then we ask for a value stated in a particular index. So let's call this one vector A. And that can equate to 2, 4, 8, 6, 5, and 7. And now from that vector we can ask it to display the 7th indice. However, as Matlab tells us, this index exceeds the matrix dimensions, which is correct because we only have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 indices. So if we were to ask instead for vector A to show us the 6th one, that it can do. So if we move on to troubleshooting of some M files, we can go through a few different examples with the 4M files we have up here. So let's start with our extraction numbers file. So these are all M files which we will have covered in the previous videos, just looking at them when we have a few little errors put in. So we already know we've got a few issues because it's showing up here on the side, but let's run it anyway, see what happens. So if we save and run, it will tell us that on line 4, column 32, we have an issue. So in that case, we've put in an extra comma. But instead of just change it in immediately, you can either pause it if it's not crucial, but it is crucial, so we'll get rid of that, and we'll run it again to find the next error. So in this case, we're now on line 22 and in column 17. So if we have a look at line 22, realize that we have a comma missing, so we can put that in. Then if we save that, we may find another error, and there it is, this time line 15, and we have capitalized the number term, which, as we can see from earlier, isn't correct. So if we change that to lowercase, because yes, it has identified exactly where the issue was that we had there. So always check what the error is, read it thoroughly, have a look. Most of the time you'll be able to figure out what it is. So if we save that and run it, there we go, it's all nicely fixed. So let's move on to the next one. So this one is looking at the sphere file which we had earlier with the if and else commands. So if we have a look at this, we can already see that we have some potential issues, but if we run it, we'll be able to see these clearly. So if we save it and run it, we are then told that we have an issue on line 6. So we go to line 6, we can have a look through it, and when we look through it nicely and carefully, we realise there is a typing error, and when we remove that, that will be that one fixed. So if we save that and run it, we find there is another error, this time on line 7. So if we pause that, run it, we realise that is the only error left. So if we unpause it, we can now have a look through this and try and figure out what is wrong. So I'm reading through it slowly. You realise that we have another case issue. So when volume is defined, it is lowercase, but in this case it is uppercase, so we'll change that. Then if we save it, if we run it, this time it works, so we know that is fixed. Let's move on to our shining loop from earlier, and just for our own sake, we'll get rid of a few zeros. Now I think we can already see what's wrong with this, but just to check, let's run it, and it tells us that in line 3, column 1, we have our issue, and the issue is quite apparent, and it also tells us that we are using the term end incorrectly, which gives us an extra hint that because 4 is a case sensitive statement, we have to change it to lowercase. And now that should work if we save it and run it. And there we go. All work and no play makes Jack a dull boy. And moving on to our final example, we'll have a look at the land speed record and file from earlier. So if we have a look at it, can you spot anything that's wrong? Before you run a file, you should always have a look over it and make sure everything looks okay. In this case, you may not see what's wrong, so you just save it and run it. But instantly we realise there is something wrong. So we're told on line 6 we have an issue with it stating figure 1. So let's have a look at all of them this time. So we'll pause that and we'll run it again. This time, told it's line 6, so we have 2 issues on line 6. So this is actually a repeated issue. So we'll have a look at what it actually is. The reason is, once again, it is case sensitive. So with figure, we have to change all of them to lowercase. And you find that there is actually a second issue in play as well. So when we run that, we fixed the case issue. And there we have it. It runs. Which means it's all fine now. Fabulous. However, because I'm using this on a home computer, we do have an issue with the advanced graphics, but that is dependent on your own PC. But for now, I think that is it for our little introduction to troubleshooting. If you have any other issues, do look over all of the other videos, and if you're still struggling, feel free to seek advice from your demonstrator or your lecturer. I hope this helps, and thank you for listening.